Let's go back to 1902, London. You're probably picturing the heart of a global empire, right? A city of incredible wealth, power, and prestige. But that was only half the story. Because hidden right there, in plain sight, was another world entirely. A world of such darkness and misery, people barely spoke its name. And the famous author, Jack London, he knew he couldn't just write about it from his comfortable desk. No, he had to go in. He had to descend into what he called the abyss. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to follow him on that harrowing journey. And these are his own words. This was his mission statement. You can feel the urgency in it, can't you? This wasn't some kind of poverty tourism. This was a deep, almost philosophical quest. He wanted to get inside a part of his own world that society had just walled off and tried to forget. He wasn't just looking for facts and figures for a book. He was trying to understand the fundamental why. Why were people living like this? And maybe the biggest question of all, what were they living for? So, how in the world does a literary superstar just disappear into the underbelly of civilization? Well, his very first attempt led to a pretty shocking discovery. The abyss, it turned out, was completely uncharted territory. It was this terrifying unknown, even to people who lived just a few miles away. I mean, just think about that for a second. This is Thomas Cook. These are the guys who could get you a ticket to the farthest corners of the globe, up the Nile, deep into the Amazon. But a neighborhood in their own city? They had no clue. They were completely baffled. Their only advice to him was, you should probably go talk to the police. That tells you everything, doesn't it? The East End wasn't just another part of London, it was treated like a hostile foreign land. When he finally convinced a cab driver to take him, the reality of it just hit him like a physical force. He talks about driving for miles and miles, and all he sees is this endless landscape of filthy bricks and human misery. He describes seeing a new kind of people, stunted, twisted, broken by hunger and hard labor. And that line, the fear of the crowd, smote me. Wow. It wasn't the fear of getting robbed. It was something deeper. A primal fear of the sheer crushing weight of all that suffering, like a giant suffocating wave about to pull him under. Right then, London knew he couldn't just be an observer, peering over the wall. To truly understand the abyss, he had to become a part of it. And that meant he had to shed his entire identity. His name, his class, his privilege, all of it had to go. And the way he did it was shockingly simple. He just changed his clothes. Look at this list. This isn't a disguise. It's a uniform. The uniform of the beaten man. Every single item tells a story, doesn't it? The shoes that have shoveled coal, that frayed jacket held together by a single sad little button. These weren't just old clothes. They were a sign, a flag that you waved to the world that said, I am broken, I have failed. And the change was instant, absolutely instant. The second he walked out onto the street wearing these rags, his entire world shifted. Or maybe more accurately, the way the world saw him shifted. He wasn't Jack London anymore. He was nobody. Invisible to the people of his own class, but to the people of the abyss, he was instantly one of them, a comrade in misery. And this slide just lays out the brutal math of it all so clearly. Look at how the language changes. Sir becomes mate. No more polite questions about which fancy cab he'd prefer. Now it's just assumed he can't afford one. Even buying a train ticket, the clerk doesn't even bother asking if he wants first or second class. London put it perfectly. He said his life had cheapened in direct ratio with my clothes. Your worth as a human being was literally stitched into the shirt on your back. So now he's in. He's wearing the uniform. He can finally meet the people of the abyss face to face, on their own terms. And the very first people he talks to, well, they paint a devastating picture of what life is like when it's stripped down to its most brutal, raw essentials. He meets this young guy, a fireman on a ship, and London describes him as a young god. Just a perfect physical specimen, strong, full of potential. But in the abyss, that kind of strength isn't a gift. It's just fuel. Fuel for the engine of industry to burn up and discard. His amazing body was already marked for destruction. So London asks him, what do you live for? What's the dream? And the answer is just so brutally honest. Booze. That's it. The fireman explains that things like a wife, a family, a home, those aren't dreams. Those are traps. They're luxuries that a man like him could never, ever afford. The only logical pleasure, the only real escape you could hope for from a life of pure misery was to get good and drunk. And here's the thing. This wasn't just him being cynical. There was a cold, hard logic behind it. On his salary, £4.10 a month, getting married and having kids wasn't a joy. It was a one-way ticket to catastrophe. It meant less food for everyone, more suffering, and a much faster slide into the gutter. For the people of the abyss, this was just simple math. Bringing a child into that world felt like a crime. So the most rational choice was to find whatever small comfort you could, which was the temporary oblivion in a bottle. London's journey starts to shift here, from these individual stories of survival to the massive, cruel systems that were built to manage the poor. Next, he decides to seek shelter in the most feared place in the entire East End, the casual ward, the place they called the Spike. This spike was the absolute end of the line. People were more scared of it than they were of prison. Sure, it offered a roof over your head, but the price was your dignity. To even get in, you had to prove you were completely penniless. Then they'd search you, strip you, make you bathe in freezing water, and the next day you'd perform hours of backbreaking labor, like smashing rocks just to pay for a lump of bread and a disgusting watery soup, and a hard plank to sleep on. And standing in that long, miserable line next to London is a man. And his story, well, his story starts with just this one stark number. He is 87 years old. And you find out this is not just some old man. This is a man who gave his entire life, everything he had, to the British Empire. He served for over 40 years. He fought in major wars. He was awarded the Victoria Cross. That's the highest possible medal for bravery. By any measure you can think of, this man was a national hero. And now, he's here, begging for a spot on a wooden plank. This is the advice he gives London, and it hits you right in the gut. He tells him his story, how after all those decades of faithful service, he struck an officer who had insulted his mother. And for that one single act of defiance, this system he'd served his whole life just erased him. They took his rank, his pension, his medals. Everything. They threw him away like a piece of trash, leaving him to die in the streets. And then, just when you think it can't get any more soul-crushing, it does. After waiting for hours in the freezing cold, a gatekeeper just cracks open the door and yells, "Full up," and then slams it shut in their faces. That's it. The 87-year-old war hero and dozens of others are just turned away, cast back out into the London night. The one place that was supposed to be the absolute last resort had failed them. Now the journey reaches its absolute darkest point. This is where London witnesses things so shocking, so visceral, that they seem to defy belief. This is the true bottom of the abyss. In Spitalfields, London finds a public park. But it's not a park. It's not a green space for people to enjoy. He says it's a welter of rags and filth, just packed with the broken bodies of the homeless, huddled together on benches against the cold. It's not a place of life, a lung for the city. He calls it a festering wound, an abscess on the face of London. And it's here, in this putrid sore, that he sees something that I'm sure haunted him for the rest of his life. He sets the scene so carefully. He tells you the exact time of day, and he reminds you of the location, not some faraway colony, but the very heart of the most powerful empire on Earth. This isn't hidden away. It's happening right there for anyone to see. And this is it. This is what he sees. Two old men so desperate with hunger that they are on their hands and knees picking literal garbage out of the grime on the sidewalk and eating it. Scraps that had been walked on, spat on, trodden into the muck. For Jack London, this was the ultimate degradation. This was the absolute bedrock of the abyss, a level of poverty so total that it erased the line between being a human and being an animal. You know, when The People of the Abyss was published, it shocked the world. It forced a conversation people had been avoiding for a very, very long time. London held up a mirror to his society and showed them the horrific human cost of their glorious empire. But his book leaves us with this haunting question, one that feels just as urgent today as it did back then. Over 100 years later, how far have we really come?